I'm Dave Emmons, of course, and I've written several books. Now I'm on my fourth book, and here is the first one. They, it's What Do They Want? And my third book actually is Angels and the Supernatural Entity.
It's just come out, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just got out the last few months, but I got my second book that I'm redoing, republishing it because the publisher didn't treat me right. So I'm going to publish the Senseless Wars, and a lot of that what we talked about in the earlier segment is in that Senseless Wars book, in which I'm going to republicize. But I'm on my fourth book, and I'll be finished with that probably, hopefully, in a couple of weeks if I don't get distracted. But
Yeah.
my background in ETs, UFOs goes back to when I was 13 years of age, and I saw my first one. This was a vague recollection, and it was a ship that looked like a small barge and had a blue undertone light to it. And I was sitting outside in my backyard with the rest of my brothers and sisters, in which I had 10 brothers and sisters and myself, and we lived in middle class. We were kind of struggling financially, but we played outside a lot. So I was sitting there by myself, and I looked up and I saw this barge looking thing about 70 feet long, maybe about 30, 35 feet wide. It had white lights on the front of it. Underneath it was a shining, glowing blue. And I looked up and I thought, what's this? That's one of those flying saucers. We called it when we was back in that day, we called it flying saucers. And I said, oh no. And I felt weird. But then I found myself in my bed, and I don't know how I got to my bed, without anybody seeing me. But I was laying there, my legs were numb, unless they come back later, and then they come in the room and mess with me, whatever, took DNA and everything from me. But my legs were numb, and I felt like somebody was next to me, and I shared a bed with my older brother. And I said, Jack, have you seen anything or heard anything? He said, no, go back to sleep. And while I was laying there, the presence was gone, and then I felt more comfortable. But that's about all I remember about that one. That was when I was 13. Now, the next following year, my best friend and I saw this one craft, and this was a kind of a flying saucer, it was kind of like the Nazi flying saucer that you might have seen some documentary films on. We were sitting down at the bottom of his steps, and he lived in the lower basement flat there, and with his dad. And so we were drinking Pepsi out of a glass bottle. That dates me right there. And we had a 10 transistor radio, and the radio started snapping and popping. And it was about 10:30 at night, as we can recall. We was on summer vacation from school. Then we smelled this smell. It smelled like sulfur, and we thought to ourselves, "What is that smell?" And as kids, we thought it's sulfur because we smelled sulfur before, but we weren't educated in all this that kind of thing. But we smelled it, and then we looked up and we saw some bright lights, small lights, coming over the treetops, and we said, "Oh, what's that?" So my buddy said, "Let's go up and grab a flashlight out of my dad's truck." So we did, and we started walking up the road, and his road, a neighborhood road, and my neighborhood road was separated by like two house rows in a backyard, and we were pretty close. You can throw a ball and to each other, but we walked slowly up this road, and his road, and he flashed this he did an SOS on the I guess you call it a flashlight. It was a normal size flashlight. You guys call it a torch, right?
Yeah. Torch.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a flashlight torch, and he thought he was communicating with him. And as I recalled later, and I thought this through, he wasn't really communicating with him. The lights were hitting the treetops, and the leaves were blocking out the light, and then the light would appear, and it would come off and come on due to the lights. He thought they were. I told him later, no, that that flashlight, they might have followed us with the flashlight, but they had us targeted. For some reason, they were going to get us either where we was on the steps or where we were going to go. So we went up to this empty lot, and it was right above. It looks a little hillside. It goes down to my backyard. So we were right over, my backyard, and we stood there in that empty lot. And this flying saucer, in which is a saucer shape, it was kind of a chubby, like these. You crank up these little tops, and they spin. And it was kind of looked like that. It had 3 layers. The bottom was black looking because it burned its way through the atmosphere, and that's what caused the smell. It was an ozone smell, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen, oxygen, all melting, together and causing I guess, what I call sulfur, like gun smell, gunpowder, or it smells like ozone, in which the modern day people, as I know it now. But we looked up and we saw this thing. It had 3 layers. The first layer was kind of thicker, around like 3 donuts piled together. And it was about 35 feet wide. It was about 25 to 26 feet tall. The first layer was probably about 8 foot, 9 foot. The second layer was probably about the same, 8 feet. And it had portals, it had windows in the second level. And we were looking at the windows, and the top had just had a little bulbous top on it with antennae. It looked like sticking up, and a red light. For some reason, I had a red light on the top of it. And the bottom, around where the windows are at, the lights were kind of shining, but they dimmed down quite a bit. And it was kind of like, it wasn't very bright from then on. We were looking at this thing, and we were only probably 75 feet away from it, maybe 80 feet away from it as you angle it across the yard. And I told him, I said, I'm afraid these things are looking out the windows. We saw shadows moving around the windows. I guess it was a one-way glass in which they had, and we pinched each other to make sure that we weren't dreaming. And he pinched me really hard, and I said, ow, that hurt. And he said, well, I got to make sure we're not dreaming. I said, well, yeah. I said, I wish my brother was here with us. And he said, yeah, he's missing out on this. And we were scared, but we were talking gibberish. And I recalled some of the gibberish later on, but I didn't recall it there at that time or afterwards. And we kept watching this thing, and we didn't know what happened next. We really don't. We ended up standing there. We don't know how long we were there, but my estimate would be that we were there from 10:30 until maybe 11:30 or midnight. It stopped. It kind of just stopped, and we were frozen. We looked at each other, and it was gone. And my buddy didn't see it leave. I saw it leave. And I said, wow, I was watching it. It just shot out to the west real quick, right through the cloud cover. And I said, wow, that was fast. And I don't know, my buddy didn't see it. He turned around to me and said, I'm going to go home and tell my dad I saw a flying saucer. And I said, yeah, I'm going to go home and tell my mom, And so we went both our ways. And the next day he told me, he said, yeah, I told my dad. He said, I walked by him at the bed, and he said, yes, son, you saw a flying saucer. Now get your ass to bed. So, and then I went home, and the doors were locked, both doors, the screen door and the regular door. And I knocked on the door, and my mom come to the door. She had it all locked up. Normally she don't lock it up that much at night if she knew that we were still out, but she thought I was staying overnight with my friend, and we were just watching TV, late TV, whatever. But she said, where you been? You know what time it is? I wish she would have told me what time it was, because I wasn't wearing a watch. And back in those days, the kids didn't have watches. Either that or I'd have a Timex or a Mickey Mouse watch. That's about the only thing we could afford. But she says, it's late. And I said, Mom, I saw a flying saucer. She said, get in the house before I flying saucer your butt. And so I went in the house, and I said, I did, Mom. She goes, okay, you did, get to bed. So, they didn't take it very serious.
Of course. Yeah.
So next day we told our schoolmates about it, and they laughed at us, of course. They were the first ones, our first critics, which you could say, that I've had to confront. And the parents also were kind of skeptic. And my buddy and I talked, and they said, we did see it. And I said, oh yeah, we did see it. It was there. And I said, I know it was there, and we knew it, and we both described it to each other, and it was right on, everything we did. We usually wait. I've been trained as a journalist and in school and everything. So I usually make a lot of notes. I have ledgers that I keep. And I didn't keep a ledger back then. I was too young to even get into that stuff, and I wasn't thinking about it. But I have a fond memory, and my brothers always tell me, said, boy, you can remember things way back in detail. I said, yeah, I can. I usually can. And I can remember. I just have a hard time with names. Usually that's about it. But everything else I remember. I remember telling my buddy, I said, well, I guess we shouldn't talk about this anymore. And he said, yeah, he says, I'm getting tired of being laughed at. And I said, yeah, I don't want to get in any fights. So we just kind of went calm. But 2 weeks later, the other shoe dropped. As I was talking about being a journalist, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it did. One day, I felt something in my left testicle, and I thought, "What the heck is that?" I reached down, I looked, and there was a red line cut, a real thin red line, about an inch long. And I didn't know it at that time, but that's a laser cut. And so I looked at it and I said, wow. And then there was a lump right underneath that red line. And I felt the lump, and I kept pushing up on it. And I had a sense about the whole situation that if I pushed hard enough and got it back through that red line, because I knew that's where it went in at, through that little red line. So I pushed hard and hard. It took me 3 or 4 minutes. I finally got it out, and there wasn't any blood. It did not bleed. And I had it in my hand, and it looked like an M&M, a small, like an Advil tablet or something. And it was kind of ash color, light color. And then as I held it out, it started getting browner because the oxygen was deteriorating the whole thing. And so I took it and showed my mom, and she goes, "What is that?" I said, "I took that out of my left testicle, Mom." And she goes, "Well, I had other words for it as a kid. The medical term I didn't come up with, but for the show, I'm going to say it that way." But I showed it to her. She said, "That looks like an ingrown hair." I said, "No, it's not, Mom. It's not a hair at all." She said, "No, it's what grew up underneath of it." I said, "No, it's not, Mom." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "There was a red line cut about an inch long, real thin red line." I said, "It looked like about the size of thread." And she stopped. She didn't know what to say. She was just frozen because she knew I finally hit her with some facts that really bothered her. And she stood there and she looked at me. She said, "Throw it away anyway. Throw it away." And she said, "Forget about it, okay?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." So that's, I forgot about it. But I remembered everything that went on during that time. I had some regressed dreams. It took a while, some years, I think, as during the 70s, I had these regressed dreams and lucid dreams, very lucid. I had a dream that I was with my buddy, the same buddy we saw the spacecraft with, and we were on board some kind of a ship or something because I was sitting on a metal table. And I remember it being very warm in that room, and it was dark. I couldn't see nothing, but I knew my buddy was on a table near me somewhere. I knew he was in there. I could feel his presence, but I couldn't see him. And I was trying to put a shirt on that was actually too small. My friend wore a small size shirt, and I guess I wore a medium. I was a little chubby guy, so on my shirt, I was trying to get it on. I couldn't get it on. I remember I was real groggy, and we ended up back on the same place we were standing, and we ended up with the right clothes on. Apparently they finally figured out they had the clothes matched up with us wrong. So they were doing some experiments on us, of course, and they was checking our DNA. And there's a lot more to this that I've learned over the years, that what they do and what they're looking for. They actually read your frequencies. They can find you with frequencies. They don't need an implant, although I got implants, but those were for biological purposes. Those were I was 14, and so I was starting of age. So, I was starting to be a man. So that's why they put it in the testicle. They wanted to influence my DNA and any DNA that I might pass on. So, and they usually go after, the smaller, not the smaller kids, but the kids that are going into puberty. They like it that way. That way they can start them off, with the genes and the DNA that they want to start you off with. So you pass it on. I thought that, okay, this is why they're doing that. And my buddy, my older brother, keeps aggravating my buddy, and we're all friends. And he says, "How come they never come back after you?" He says, "I don't know." He's never had any contact with ETs ever since that, but I've had a lot of contact. And recently, the last, I guess, 12, 13 years, I've had, it's just blew up exponentially. I mean, I just had so many frequent paranormal experiences also, but he hasn't had any. But he was a police chief, and so he couldn't really talk or do too much. And then he worked for Boeing, and he was in security, he had a confidential clearance, so he couldn't talk or say too much about anything. He didn't even want to friend me on Facebook because he knew that I was having UFOs and things on my Facebook
He's the
page.
UFO guy, and I work for a big
Yeah,
company that
yeah,
would take kindly to that kind of friend.
right.
Right.
Now with disclosure, it's a little bit different. They're a little bit more lenient on that. But I thought, okay, there was something that they didn't want with him. It wasn't the DNA, or was it his frequencies or whatever. They go after a certain frequency of DNA, and it's usually family oriented. It's in your bloodline. Uh, I have a theory on that. I just come up with the last few months, and I've talked about it on different shows. That 80% of our DNA, scientists say, is junk, and 20% is us. Okay, but that's not really true. Now scientists are saying that 80% is something. It means something. It has some information stored in that
They just don't know
80%.
what it is. Yeah.
Yes. And what it is, it's your long bloodline history that's in that 80%. It's a recorded history of you and of mankind, of
Okay.
where we
Wow.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
originate.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So they're interested in that 80%, not especially for me, or for us as individuals. The 20%, yeah, they're taking our DNA, and they know who we are. They get our frequencies. They either put an implant in you, but the implants are basically for uh, changing your DNA, modifying your DNA for their purposes. We don't really know what that purpose is. You have all kinds of theories what the ETs are here for and what they're looking for. I know what they're looking for. I don't know why. Or is there going to be a day that that they're going to make their move? I hope they don't make it now with the administration we got now.
But when they make their move, what happens to you guys who've had your DNA changed, you've been experimented on in some way?
It's I guess you go back, and I wrote this book, Angels and Supernatural Beings, and I got into a lot of biblical things. And if you have the frequency or DNA that they've been tagged you with, there's a possibility that you could be involved in a rapture and they could take you. But I'm too old. They don't want me. but I've got that DNA from what they manipulated in me, because I know I'm being. There's things that happen. I was telling you earlier in the early part of the show that what has happened to me lately. But and it kind of scares me sometimes. But I'm not fearful of the ETs at all. It's been a spiritual thing. Whenever I met up with an ET, it was kind of adrenaline rush. And they say that adrenaline rush, and scientists say if you have an extraterrestrial experience, and if you get fearful, and it's even like seeing a ghost or something, you get really fearful, your adrenaline flows. And when your adrenaline flows, it increases your brain cells. And, it's just, they say it increases your brain cells. You actually get smarter from this. And there was one scientist who said there was 3 ways you do this: by fear, or you can go into a shower, take a hot shower, and then your last minute turn on the cold water, and your whole body will be shocked. And it's that shocking that turns up the adrenaline, and it sparks brain cells. Yes.
So it's sort of creating synapses there to deal
Yes.
with whatever situation your
Yeah,
body is having.
the little octopi, I call them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Because
hands. Yeah. The
yeah,
tentacles.
yeah. In 2011, I took one out of my leg, an implant, and I got a lot of pictures of it.
And it
And
looked like that.
yes, I had a biological supervisor at the St. Louis University. She worked there. She was an older lady. And I had my little microscope, and I took it to a UFO meeting up in Illinois. And there's about 30 people there. And I took it, put it under a glass, and I showed everybody. And the biological person, she looked at it, and she was very experienced. She said, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that before." She said, "It looks like little octopi." And I said, "Yes." I said, "They're kind of crawling around." And I said, "Yeah, it looked like brain neurons, like you were just alluding to a while ago."
What year was this?
2011.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was after I met a humanoid ET in 2010. And
The ETs that you've met, and I'm sure everybody asked you the same question, but you said there are different types of them. So what types have you met, Pleiadians and etc., and what do they look like? I'd be very interested in finding that out.
okay. In and I didn't see any of them in my even in my regress dreams from the first two encounters I had with UFOs. But in 1995, I had a visit by a little gray, about 3.5 feet tall, maybe 4 at the most. And my ex-wife and my wife at the time, but ex now, but she liked the room dark because she couldn't sleep. She actually put a blanket over the curtains and everything. So, and it was really dark in there. And my adopted daughter would come in through our room sometimes to go to the medicine cabinet to get herself aspirins. She had headaches quite a bit, migraines, and so I thought I heard somebody come in the room, and this was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I put my elbow on the in the bed, and I put my hand in my chin in my palm, and I looked up and I hollered out her name 3 times, and then I saw this dark figure walk past the mirror, and I said, "What's going on here?" And I looked around again, and I changed hands. I put my chin in my left hand, and I looked at this thing, and it was a little gray creature, but it was gray green actually. It had big eyes, and the lenses weren't on. I imagine the lenses are only on there when it's light or bright. They don't like bright light.
The lenses are those black. The black eyes are actually lenses.
I would say so, because this one didn't have. His eyes were twice our size, and you could see the whites in the pupils, and I could see his eyes and his face. He wasn't the commercial real smooth like ETs you see, not smooth at all. This one had deep wrinkles. You can lose a credit card in the wrinkles, I always say, so and I looked at him and I was fearful. I mean, my heart was racing for about 5, 7 seconds. And then I felt this calm, and I laid back and I was out. I don't remember anything after that. But I didn't see him move his hands or anything, but I could see him looking at me, and he turned his head a little bit and he was staring at me. And that's what scared me. I didn't know what he was going to do. And he had little, just like they say, little nose holes, just a little bump there, and he had a little mouth. And I thought, well, that's familiar, but the wrinkles and the ugliness wasn't. I didn't think they were going to be
like a smooth, sort of 50s Harryhausen style.
Yeah. But he was a little uglier than that. So I woke up. It had to have been about an hour later. I woke back up, and I asked my wife. I said, "Did you see or hear anything?" She goes, "No, go back to bed." I got up, and my eyes were flickering. It's a nervous tick. I've talked to other abductees, and they said the same thing, that their eyes they couldn't stop their eyes from fluttering. It's some kind of something that the magnetic energy or whatever they were out with, it kind of made their eyes twitch. I went into the bathroom, I couldn't stop my eyes. I splashed myself with cold water, and I kind of washed up a little bit, and I walked into the living room because I couldn't go back to sleep. I was too hyped up. And I sat there, and it was only about an hour, so I had to get ready to go to work anyway. So I sat there and watched TV, tried to calm down, and I couldn't. And I thought, wow, I need to talk to somebody, but who do I talk to? it was just that rush. And I went to work, and I told the guys at work, of course, they said I was crazy, and, because they were a lot of people are just skeptic by nature. If they don't see it, they don't believe it. I can take that. Okay. But if you call me crazy, then our conversation is done. Yeah. But if they say I have to see one to believe one, I said, good. Yeah, thank you. I'll shake their hand. That's fine.
I mean, a decent person will say, I believe you believe what you saw, but I find it difficult to entertain such a thing existing myself. But I believe that you believe it, and that's a diplomatic person, right?
Right. Yeah.
Giving you some credence and respect, at least.
Right.
So what happened after that?
Okay, what happened after that in 2001? A bad year for us here in the States, of course, but in 2001, I saw my third UFO, in which was actually kind of like a drone, like a small jet, about a 15-foot wingspan, maybe about a 15, 17-foot fuselage, and it didn't have a cabin. It didn't have no means. It had one tail rudder, vertical rudder, and that was it. Didn't have parallel rotors on the back, just a single one. And it seemed like it was like melted aluminum. It was just all one big hunk. And I was up on the towers on the refinery. I was a supervisor in the refinery, and I was up checking the equipment. And I was up about 140 feet. We had a stair, like went up this tower, the reactor tower. And I saw this thing coming from the east and was sparkling. And it looked like it was only about maybe 30 feet above my position, which my position was about 130 feet high. So it must have been maybe 160 feet, 170 feet off the ground. It come towards me real slow, and I kept watching. And then I called down. I had a phone line. I called down to the control room, and I said, "Hey guys," I said, "look up to the east from the control room. You'll see something strange." And they laughed at me on the phone. They said, "Oh, there's that Dave again, that crazy UFO crap." I said, "Okay, all right, fine." So I stood there and I watched this thing. It come up close to me, and it was probably about 30 feet over my head. I felt some kind of energy, like something. It was kind of like I was so hyped up in the moment. You always are when you see these things. And I thought to myself, first thing I thought about, I said, this can't be a plane, because it's illegal to fly over a refinery in the United States because of EPA regulations. They don't want any crashed planes in a refinery because you blow up the city.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's illegal. So I said, that's illegal. They can't do that. And I said, well, what am I, a dummy? You're talking about a UFO. You're not talking about, a human aircraft. And this thing turned and it went south, went real slow. Matter of fact, it was traveling slow. So it couldn't, if it was a glider, it couldn't keep aloft at that speed. And also, what would a glider be doing around a refinery only about, 160 feet off the ground? It wouldn't do that. Not, we couldn't do it.
But also, you'd see wings.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it did have wings, and it didn't have a cabin, or it didn't have any windows, had no means, it didn't make any sound. And it was strange. And I thought to myself, that's a UFO. And it went south. And I told the guys about it, and they laughed, of course. I should know better by now, or by then, that these people are not going to listen to me about this stuff. But a couple of nights later, which was weird, they downloaded the future to me. It told me that the refinery was going to close, and it was going to happen within the next few months. I was off work because I went into surgery for my back, and that surgery changed my whole career path, because I couldn't work in a refinery anymore after I had metal put in my back, and they even told me that. So, but while I was off, the refinery did close. They announced closure of the refinery. They called me crazy because they just put $6 million worth of renovation in our unit alone, and the other units had more money. I said, well, sometimes they do that to pretty up things to sell. They said, you're crazy. You're crazy, Dave. This refinery is not closing. I said, yes, it is. I had this lucid dream, took me back to, I was walking around the unit just like I was there. I thought I was working, and I was checking the equipment, listening for any strange sounds with the equipment. I felt the vibrations of the machines, and I walked to the blower room, which is very loud, huge blower room that creates the energy that goes up in the reactor and pumps the air to it to increase the temperature to 1400 degrees, 1500 degrees. And so I didn't hear the sound. I said, what's going on? And I ran to the control room, and I went in there. It was all dark. No panel lights, nothing was on. I said, oh my God. And I felt, and right away, it told me telepathically, the refinery is closed. It will be closed. And that was my dream. And that's what I told the guys. And they said I was crazy. But 3 or 4 months later, it closed.
Wow.
And when I went in to get my personal gear after my surgery, I had a supervisor, walk me through to the unit. And I got my stuff out of my little, I didn't have much there that I kept there all the time, but my locker room, I took it out of my locker. And I asked the supervisor, I said, I'd like to just stand here and look around a little bit. He says, yeah, Dave, it's okay. What's wrong? I said, nothing, I'll tell you. And I walked over to the control area, the control room, and it was dark, no sounds, no nothing, quiet. And I just said, whoa, this is eerie, to feel that. And I walked over to the supervisor. I said, do you know that I told the guys that this plant would close? And it closed on just about the same time that I said it was closed. And I said, this is what I saw in my dream. He said, "Whoa, Dave, you're giving me chills. Don't be talking that stuff." And he was a nice guy. And I said, "I don't mean to be, scaring you, but that's what I saw." And I said, I attribute it to this craft that I saw that downloaded some information to me. So they do see in the future. They can plant dreams and your memory. They can control our minds. They can control our memories, whatever goes in and out. They take information out, but sometimes they'll leave you a little morsel, and I'm lucky that a lot of times things that's happened to me, I've had these regressed lucid dreams in which told me basically where I was at and what happened, during the times that I was abducted. So there's been years that nothing really happened too much. ETs don't work on schedule. They'll come into your life when they want. I saw a little back in the early 2000s. I saw orbs and I saw lights. I didn't pay any attention to orbs. I said to myself, I saw real craft up close, so I know what they look like. So I don't count the orbs. Even today, the orbs, yeah, I'll look at them. If they make a weird move, then I say, yeah, that's probably a UFO, but no biggie. I've seen them up close. So you got to show me something more. It's like when Spielberg makes a new episode, you want it to be better than the first, So it's something in that thought line. But through the 2000s, I had my own business. I was busy. I played music also. And in the early years, I was in combat in Vietnam, and I went to school, night school, and I played music 3 nights a week. And I was very busy in the 70s and the 80s, and then partly in the 90s when I started working in a refinery, because I knew the radio business wasn't paying any money, and that's what I went to school for. But I just thought to myself, those years were kind of quiet until 2001, and I saw this one craft. And then in 2008, things started coming back again on
That's
a
an
paranormal.
interesting time for that to start up again, isn't it?
Yeah, they'll
Another
sometimes.
troubled year.
Yeah. So they'll leave you for a while, but they'll always come back sometime. You never know when. But this was a concentration of things that happened in 2008, 2009. I had the experience with dragonflies. Now these are kind of like a spiritual messenger, the Native American Indians would call them. And dragonflies, I actually got it on my chain here. I got dragonfly on my chain along with the Ankhs, the Egyptian Ankhs. So these are things that I believe in. But the dragonfly is my totem. But now that I saw a white dove, that might be my totem now, a messenger, whatever. But I had a bunch of dragonflies in my front yard in the tree. And there must have been 200 or 300 of them. I've never seen that many. And I was going to take a load of furniture out to my niece and her husband. He was in the Marines out in San Diego, and I was going to drive from Illinois to San Diego, which is a pretty good drive. And it's a huge truck. And then I was pulling a trailer, a car, a heavy car on a trailer, plus a long, big truck in which I was loading. It was longer than a semi-tractor trailer that we have here in the U.S. But my brother was sitting there, and he was going to be one to take me to the truck in the morning at my niece's house, and he looked at these dragonflies in the front yard. He said, "Wow, I've never seen this many." I said, "I haven't either." I said, "This is weird." He said, "Wow," he said, "this is remarkable." And I thought, okay, what's going to happen? And he said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Dave, you're the one that gets into all this stuff." And I said, "Well, tells me it's a message. Why would they come there right in front of us? There, 200 or 300 of them, and which was amazing to begin with. I'd never see that
Yeah,
many.
I've never heard of anything like that.
But the next morning we went, and the truck, the U-Haul truck, in which was one of the largest you can get, it had on the side of it. My brother was looking and walked the whole line of how long that whole truck and the trailer was. He said, "Have you ever driven anything this big?" I said, "Well, I've driven a lot of things, but maybe not this big." I said, "All the way out to California." And so the one guy told me, he says, "I couldn't do it." He said, "I'm glad you're doing it." He said, "You must be one heck of a driver." I said, "Well, I've been driving a lot," but I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna give it a go." So on the side of the truck, as my brother was looking at everything else, I saw a huge dragonfly painted on the side of the truck. And I tapped my brother on the shoulder and said, "Look," I said, "what does that tell you?" "That tells me that the trip's going to be fine. Everything will be fine. I'll make it with no problem." So that was my first kind of a spiritual thing. And as I was going out there through Oklahoma and Texas and going out to the West, dragonflies would come around the truck. They'd actually fly into the truck and commit suicide, I guess. And I thought to myself, oh, don't do that to me, guys. You're supposed to be my messengers, you know. So it was kind of a spiritual journey. I think that kind of kicked off things again because of the consciousness. And if you have a lot of spirituality and consciousness, that attracts ETs. Actually, you can actually invite them in with that. And the
Is it the same sort of principle as it? Some people claim that whenever they're out in the street, they're always approached by somebody strange or unusual all the time. Some people say, you know what, I seem to attract these people to me. And if you know people like that, you think, yeah, there's something about you that says you're open for business, you know, in the sense that you won't judge and you're available for strange talk. And whoever approaches you, I get this a lot, knows they're not going to have a bad experience, whatever they've got to say.
You're correct.
Is that the same thing?
Yes. People actually can feel that energy with you, that consciousness. So that's how I felt how things started. The next thing, it was about a year later, 2010. My buddy who writes ghost books, and I know you probably had ghosts on your shows, ghost shows, and I went on some ghost hunts, and I'm not just an ET guy, but I'm experiencing a little bit of everything. But I went on ghost hunts with him, and I told him, I said, you won't see a ghost with me with you. He said, why is that, Dave? I said, they don't like me for some reason. My energy is different than what theirs. Yeah. So, and he's written about 9 books now. He's still a good buddy, and we keep in touch. But I went to a lady that he sent me to in Upper Illinois, and she was part Native American Indian. Well, she had this craft shop, and this craft shop was up on a hill, and you had to drive a little bit on this little rocky road, kind of like the houses that you guys have in England, you know, where the cottages. You'd take a little road up there, and there's a pond off to the side, you know, kind of like beautiful, like country area. And I soon I drove in, about 100 dragonflies crossed the front of my car.
Wow.
And I stopped, and I had chills all over me. I said, oh my God, what is this saying? And I said, it tells me I'm going to have a great experience with this. She's not a psychic, in which I found out when I walked in. She had a shop. She had Indian jewelry and stuff that she was selling. And she was a very nice lady. She was just a little bit older than me. And she says, sit down. And then she closed her eyes, and she looks up, and she says, I can tell you have a bad back. I said, okay, I'll give you that. I might have, hunched over a little bit as I walked through the door. I said,
body language there. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I said, I don't really particularly like psychics. And she looked at me, she was mad. She said, I'm not a psychic. She said, I'm a spiritual guide person. She said, I'm a medium. And I said, okay. And she goes, now be quiet. She said, she closed her eyes. And she looked up at me. She says, you're going on a trip soon, aren't you? I said, yeah. How did you know? And she says, what, you're about 9 days, something like that, 10 days? I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to Sedona. And I said, you're right. And she said, okay. She closes her eyes, and she looks at me again. And she said, they tell me your car is going to be damaged, but you're going to be able to finish your drive and see your friends in New Mexico. I said, how bad? I said, am I going to get hurt? She goes, no. You're not going to be hurt. Your car will be drivable, but she said there'll be damage to your car. And then the third thing she said something about a blonde lady that's looking for me. That could have been an ET, And I said, well, I'll give you that. I've been drowned in this ET stuff. And then the fourth thing she told me, she said, this was really phenomenal. She said, you're going to meet your first ET on this trip. I said, I already met an ET. She said, no, you're going to meet another one. This time you're going to be up close with this one. I said, really? She goes, yes, that's what they're telling me. She told me something else, and I got the list somewhere, but it didn't relate to what my trip was about. But it was very phenomenal. She was actually 4 out of 5 correct. And that's she was right on. So I took off to Sedona 9 days later, and it just I had to put the trip plan, but she didn't know it, and she didn't know where I was going. And I told her when she was telling me these things she saw. So I went out to Sedona on October 4th, and I risked, and my brother called me because he kept track of me, because he said he thinks the ETs were going to take me and abduct me and I'll be gone forever. So he's always worried about that. And he would call me just to see if I was okay. And he called and I said, yeah, I'm going to take a quick nap. I said, I drove for 23 hours and I'm going to take a quick nap and I'm going to go out on the town. Actually, not the town, but around, see the beautiful buttes and stuff like that. And he says, yeah, good luck on that. So I rested 2 hours and I got up and freshened up, and I went out and had a quick bite to eat. And then I went to this big gift shop. It was in the valley. And these gals there at the gift shop, while I was buying a few things, they said, oh, the people saw a UFO over there at Cathedral Rock. I said, oh, really? I said, that's what I'm here for. And she said, well, you might want to go over there first. I said, I know where it's at. I've been there already. And that was my third trip to Sedona at that point. The second trip I went with my brother, but I went there to the Cathedral Rock, pulled in. I started filming the butte with my Sony camcorder. And then behind me, a white car pulls in behind me in the parking space behind. We were the only ones there. It was kind of cloudy, a little bit sprinkly every once in a while. It was kind of cool. It's not a good day in Sedona. It's not beautiful like that. I turned around and she walks up to me. She had her arms folded in front of her and she walks up to me. She was smiling and I was filming her. I filmed her just a little bit and I asked her, I said, what's your name? She says, Hiroko. And I said, okay, mine's Dave. Nice to meet you. I said, I'm here looking for UFOs. And lo and behold, I was talking to an ET. But she smiled and then I put the camera down and I said, are you here? Are you waiting on people? She goes, no. I said, are you going to take a hike? She goes, no. And I said, well, you just come here to look at the butte? She goes, no, I'm here because I'm supposed to meet you. I said, you're supposed to meet me? She goes, yes. And I thought, okay, something's funny here, something weird. My ever-present combat experience is there going around like a radar unit. And I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? And I said, you were supposed to meet me. She goes, yes. I said, you know me? She said, yes, I do know you. I said, I don't know you. She says, well, we were supposed to meet. Good title of a book, right? I'm not going to tell you.
We're supposed to meet.
Yeah, that's in the making right now. And it's just because of that statement, in which really opened my eyes up to a lot of different things. And she said yes. And it started raining a little bit. And I said, you want to get in the car and just chat, And she goes, sure. And so she gets in the car with me. And when we get in the car, there's another car that pulled up beside us, parking space over. And this is what I was telling about the alphabet guys. She was being followed. There was this guy probably in his late 20s, and he had close cropped hair, and he had some kind of a,
like an earpiece,
earpiece with a microphone or something. And he wouldn't turn and look at me. That's one sign. Either they're dimensional if they don't turn and look at you in the face, or they're hiding their face because they're on a secret mission or whatever.
Okay.
They don't want you to see him. So every time I looked over there, I tried to see if he was looking at us. He didn't. He didn't turn his head one time. I looked over at her. I didn't say anything that time, but she started talking to me. I said, could you tell me why we were supposed to meet? She goes, no, we were just supposed to meet. She goes, it's nice to see you. And I said, really? I said, okay. And then she went on and she started talking about her past in Tokyo. And of course, everybody from Japan is going to say they're from Tokyo if they want an alibi. So that's what she told me. The red flags were popping up as she was talking. She
looked Japanese, or?
Yes, she looked Japanese. Actually, I got a picture of her in my book, and I've got other pictures. I got about 9 pictures of her and I. And so I wanted to get the pictures because the red flags were popping. Mm-hmm. And I tried to memorize everything she said, and but she was starting to elicit emotions from me. She started saying that her mom and dad treated her mean, and that her boyfriend, was mean. And she started crying. She put on a cry, and I said, and I put my hand on top of her hand. I said, that's okay, Hiroko, you're fine. I said, I said, we all go through these kind of problems. But when I touched her hand, it was burning hot. It was above fever pitch. It was above any fever that anybody could have. And I took my hand off her hand. I said, wow, you're burning hot. And I said, are you okay? And she goes, yeah. And I said, it's cool out there. And you just have a little white, thin sweater with a tank top on. And she had denims. And there was a mud splatter on her left leg at the calf area. It was a mud splatter. She said she was out hiking the night before. And that's when the UFO was there, you know. So we kept talking. And then this guy, he pulled out and then he pulled back in. And I looked over, then I started getting a little bit afraid. My military was kicking in. I had a license to carry a gun, had a gun in the console. And I didn't carry it on me back then. We couldn't, but in Arizona you could, but I didn't anyway, because I was used to, you know, just having it concealed in the car. So she knew what was in that console. She looked at the console and looked at me. And I asked her, I said, do you know this guy? She goes, no. And she was telling me with her eyes, and she stared at me like she was burning holes in the back of my head. I said, Hiroko, don't do that. I said, you're burning holes in the back of my head. I actually told her that. And I said, okay, you know, I said, fine. So we kept talking, and then she said she had to have a baby. Now, that should have hit me solid. But at that point, I was just taking it in. I said, you got to have a baby. I said, but your boyfriend treats you mean, so you don't have a husband, and so you're going to get married. She said, I'd like to get married to him, but he's too mean. And she had this pity party. She was practicing emotions. I heard this from David Jacobs, from his books and stuff, that they practice. And Daryl Sims talked about this. They practice emotions. Matter of fact, he was the guy that I called after my encounter with this gal to ask him, you know, what this is all about. He kind of told me from other people's experiences that they practice emotions on us humans to learn how to be more human so they can walk amongst us, just like the book is called. David Jacobs wrote the book. And so she kept saying, I said, why do you say you got to have a baby? She said, oh, I do. She said, I have to. So this guy pulled out, and then 15 minutes later, he come back in as we were talking. We talked a lot of small stuff, and I give her this little trinket, little necklace trinket, and that I bought at the little shop. And I told her, I said, well, you need something to take with you from Sedona. Here, have this. I bought this, you know, and there was some printing on it, some reading. She said, could you read that? I said, you can speak English, but you can't read it. She goes, no, I can't read English. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. And she said, I know 20 languages. I said, what? 20 languages? She goes, yeah. Wow. I said, whoa, you know, red flag popped up again, you know. So I just sat there and I was kind of amazed at what she was, you know, what she was all about. I asked her, I said, are you an angel? She goes, no, I'm no angel. And I said something about ET, and that just went right over her head. She didn't even want to listen to that. And then I asked her, I said, how old are you? And I told her my age to, you know, to kind of open the door. And she got come on point, and she looked at me. She said, you humans, she said, there is no age, there is no time. Don't you understand? I said, whoa. I said, us humans, you know? And then she said, your God is like, okay, it's my God, but not your God. You know, these are things that I picked up. They're just red flags. And so I told her, I said, well, I guess we need to break for now, go back to our rooms. She stayed at one lodge and I was at another. At least that's what she was saying. And then we took off, and I tried to follow her a little bit just to see where she was going, what part of town. But she was traveling so fast, I couldn't keep up with her. I mean, she drove that car like it was a flying saucer. I mean, she was just gone. And I went back to my room and I got out my legal pad, started making all kinds of notes. I made about 3 pages of notes of everything, and I've got them in my files. I got a lot of those notes in my book that I wrote. And so I told her, I said, let's meet the next following day. And I said, for breakfast. She said she's going to Phoenix, and then she is going to LA after that, Los Angeles. She didn't say LA. She said Los Angeles. And she said, there's a lot of nice people there. And I said, yeah, I bet there is, maybe ETs, So she met me the next morning, and it was about 9:30 or so. She was about 10 minutes or 15 minutes late, but I was standing there and I knew she was coming. There was a message sent to my head, like telepathically, that she was coming. Don't start without her. So she pulled in, and I told her, I said, yeah, I knew you were going to be here. And I said, you told me, didn't you? And she looked at me kind of funny. And I said, did you check out your room? And she goes, yeah, what do you mean check out? And I said, if you use a credit card, I said, if you didn't check out, I said, they're going to probably charge you for the next night if you don't check out and officially, withdraw your payment or make a payment. And so I let her use my phone. Now that's another thing. She didn't have any jewelry, no makeup, no purse, nothing on her. She was just plain, just the little thin white sweater, white tank top, and blue jeans. And
a car.
Yeah, she had a rented car. Yeah, I saw the rented car. I saw where there was a box there, and it had, some kind of a GPS thing on it. And I knew it was rented by taking a look at it. But she met me there. We went to have breakfast. We were standing in this little room that has a gift shop it was something to kill time before you got your seat. And she looked around. There's only about 12 people, and the room was fairly good size. She looked at these people. She goes, all these people, red flag. She's from Tokyo. There's about 1,000 people per square block, So if she's used to Tokyo and all the people there, why did she say 12 people all in one place? It was a lot of people. It's not. So we went in to eat, and I ordered for her. She didn't know what to order, so I ordered things for her. She ate just very little, and I ate my food, and we got up and we was going, and she went to the bathroom. I don't know if she went there to regurgitate because she didn't eat our food. Maybe she didn't eat our food, and she had to, regurgitate it back. So she comes back out, and then I said, let's take a drive around, look at the buttes. So we did. We went driving around looking at the buttes, and I said, I'll say a prayer for you. I held her hand. I prayed, and I said that you get, you and your boyfriend get together and you have your baby. And she goes, yes, I got to have a baby. And I said, why? Really? What's going on? She looked like to be in her early 30s, maybe. Maybe the age wasn't really quite that. But she goes, she says, I was supposed to meet you, and I've done that. And she goes, I said, why? And I didn't know, but I had a regress dream later on that told me why. And but then we went to this restaurant after we walked around a little bit. I won't get into a lot of the little details, but we went to the restaurant, and I ordered a couple of slices of pizza for lunch for her, so, and she watched me with the pizza to see how to eat it, because she didn't know how to handle it. And she just took a few bites off of one piece of pizza, and she stared at me. Her eyes were just glistening. And then she goes, I like you. I said, I like you too, Hiroko. I said, but what's going on with you? How do you know me? She says, I just know you. I said, okay. I said, this is a mystery. And then she went to the bathroom, and she had a little bag, little black canvas bag looking thing that she took with her to the bathroom. And I don't know what was in that bag. It wasn't makeup or anything, because she didn't have any on. She didn't use makeup. So she comes back out and she goes, I really like you. And I said, okay, I don't know where that's going. I said, but I felt like a father-daughter relationship. It didn't feel like a romantic relationship. It was a father-daughter type thing. And my feelings were correct a few months down the road. And so we went up on top airport lookout, and there was a Japanese guy, about in his 50s, maybe 60, and he had a bunch of camera gear on him and stuff. And he walked past us real close, and he looked at both of us. And I asked her, I said, do you know him? She goes, no. I said, how come you didn't say hi? He's a fellow countryman, And she goes, we don't do that. She said, that embarrasses. When we see somebody in a foreign country, we say hi to our Japanese countrymen. We don't do that. I said, what? I never heard of that before. They didn't speak because they knew each other. And in the books that I think it was several of these ufologists have written, they said that when there's an ET, humanoid ET here, an hybrid or whatever, that there's a caretaker, in which is an Earth being, in which that could have been the Japanese guy. There's security, in which could have been that one NSA guy, as I talked about.
Did he also appear Japanese, the guy in the car?
No, he had blondish hair and it was cut really short.
Of European appearance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And but I thought that they, now knowing that the military they're involved with ETs, and they've been involved for 50, 60 years. So knowing
they're saying as much now, aren't they? They're actually openly saying it.
Well, there's a lot of people coming forward that were generals, colonels, all this, and they said that they work with them, and they've been working with them for years.
There's no way, really, Dave, that these people are coming forward in front of Congress, even though they're calling themselves whistleblowers. There's no way they're coming forward unless they're being told to come forward. They wouldn't be doing it. They wouldn't get there.
Well, they're supposed to protect whistleblowers, but with what we got going on now, we don't have First Amendment rights. We don't have freedom of speech now. So you're on to something. I know what you're on to. That this is a ploy. This is a tactic to divert the attention, from what's really going on.
Well, perhaps that, but also as a preparatory stage for something in future. I don't know what it might be, but either a diversion or a preparation. Some people say, don't they? I don't know enough about it, but it does seem almost like when I saw, it was a funny meme. I'll tell you what it was. You've probably seen it already, and it was the whole I want to believe thing. Only it said with the UFO, it said I used to believe, but then the US government told me they were real. That
was X Factor TV show that they showed that on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was a funny thing because, of course, the general reaction was, oh, well, if the US government is saying they are real, there must be some other reason for that. So maybe they're not real. That was the sort of the blowback to that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was X-Files, not X Factor.
X-Files, yeah.
I'm thinking about the
that cursed music show that we
America's Got Talent.
Simon Cowell. Killer Cowell, yeah.
Simon Cowell,
yeah.
So it's X-Files, yes.
That's right.
But we don't know what's going on. There's so much disinformation. We have news organizations here that only cover one side of the story. They don't cover everything. And that's bias, and they're disinformation and misinformation. We don't know what to believe. You look at the internet nowadays, and they got people dead that's still walking around. This is crazy. I in the comments I said, "You're lying." I said, "Quit this disinformation." My God, we have enough of it.
That's how it works. Disinformation, isn't it? You just give lots of little bits of truth and surround them with lies. Yeah. And then the hope is, of course, like that QAnon thing that went on, to drag reasonable people that have objections to things that are happening into a sort of a crazy subsection of that resistance, so you can eliminate them from the argument.
Yeah, and then you mentioned this David Gershon, this disclosure thing. People ask me, what is it about disclosure? What can you say about it? I said, well, it's going to dribble out. I said, but our government. I actually heard the ETs are telling our government they don't want to be disclosed. They don't want to have to be meeting on lawns of all these presidents and leaders of the world. They don't want that yet. They said, us people, we're not ready for it. And we're not. There's a lot of people, it's 50, 60% of the people, they'd be out of their minds if they actually knew that there were ETs here on Earth. And I know they are. I've met a few. So I know they're here. They're not just flying around us. They're here walking amongst us. And that's what all Vernon Mack and David Jacobs, all of them write about. And that's what they said. They are here. And I've met some weird people. And but this disclosure, I had a newspaper article, and I'll get to what you're thinking about why they're doing this. There was a journalist who sent me part of an article of a New Jersey casino statisticians who said that we were going to be attacked by extraterrestrials by October of this year. And she sent me that article, and she said, Dave, could you comment on this? And I said, sure. So I commented, and I went in and I talked about the casino. I said, well, casinos, a lot of times there's crime and corruption that follows, casinos. And but she couldn't put that in there because we have a casino here in town. And if she did that, her newspaper would go downhill on advertisements. So I said, okay, leave that paragraph out. I said, but these statisticians are probably involved with some kind of cabal or corruption. They're trying to spread misinformation or set us up for something. I said, no, the ETs are not going to attack us. I said, we are their kids. We belong to them. They actually help produce us here on Earth, and they've been modifying us throughout the years, thousands and thousands of years. And it's biblical. I mean, you can get into the Bible, and every story you see in the Bible, you can relate it to some ET event. But I told them in the article, I said, no, there will not be an attack from ETs. I said, the biggest thing we have to worry about right now with all this disclosure and this discussion, just what you were saying, false flag event, in which I heard that the military has holograms that they can put up in the air and make it look like
I heard something about that.
Yeah, Project Bluebeam, I think it's called.
That's okay. Yeah. By projecting basically holograms of spaceships onto the sky, right. So it appears like we're being swarmed, invaded, or something like that.
And what's going to really happen? They're going to hit us with that DO weapon, the direct energy weapon, in which has been used, and I don't want to say because I don't know for sure, but there's possibilities it's been used quite a few times now.
Okay.
But I look at the disclosures; it's not going to really happen because I heard that the 50% of the Pentagon don't want it to happen, and the other 50% do. So there's an infighting with the military, and so some of these hearings they've had they've actually canceled one. The military has canceled one of the hearings that is going to have in Florida, I believe, is going to be at an air base. They canceled that, and I thought, okay, now they're starting to hesitate and stall. So this disclosure could be a setup for a false flag, in which the New World Order and all this other stuff that's involved. Getting back to my story, because I don't want to get too deep into
it. No, sure, sorry,
but getting back, she got in her car, and back before she got in her car, she was still in my car, and I said, well, I guess this is goodbye. And she goes, I want those pictures. She said, make sure you send me those pictures. And she gave me an email address, and I wrote it down. I had a card. I usually just had a little card. It's had my name, and it had my phone number and my email address. That's all it had on it. It didn't have my home address. I never handed out my home address to anybody, just my name and an email and phone number. That was just a little calling card. I give her that. I said, this is my email. And I wrote hers down. Before she left, I leaned over to give her a peck, and then she pointed at her cheek. I give her a peck on the cheek, like a father-daughter thing. And I said, it was nice seeing you. I said, I hope I meet you again sometime. She said, we might, and I said, great. I said, you take care. I hope you have your baby. And I said, I'll still be scratching my head about why you keep saying that we were supposed to meet. But then she got in her car and she took off, and that was over then. But 5 months later, the other shoe dropped. My cousin and I was sitting on front of my porch in Illinois. And we were sitting there. It was a nice day. It was St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2011. And it was about 1:30 in the afternoon. And we were sitting there smoking cigars and just chatting up a storm. My cousin and I always hung out together. And there were my cousin thought they were Chinese. They were about 250 feet away near the 2-lane highway. There was a little distance from my house, but they were walking towards us. And he said, do you know those Chinese? I said, they're not Chinese, they're Japanese. And he said, how do you know? I said, I know. And I said, I think I know the woman. There was a woman there with them, and it was 2 young boys. They were young teenagers, maybe 15, 16 years old. And they were tall, a little bit taller than the average Japanese. And I said, I think I know the woman. I said, I don't know who the young boys are. And the woman stopped. She turned around and faced the other direction. She didn't want me to see her face because that was Hiroko. And guess what? She had the same white little thin sweater and the same denims and the same clothes on. And I wasn't close enough to see if she had the same mud splotch on her pants, but hopefully she washed them. But the two young guys walked up to us. They walked up my driveway and close. They was only about 10 feet away from us. And my cousin said, "You know them?" I said, "No, I don't know them." I said, "Like I told you, I know the woman that's standing out there with her back towards us." I said, "That's Hiroko." He said, "Who in the hell is Hiroko?" I said, "I'll tell you later." So these two young guys looked at us, and they had these sharp eyes too that can just see right through you. They were staring at us. And they asked me one question. They said, "Where's the new Walmart at?" And I told them, I said, "It's right over that bypass, about a quarter of a mile so past there." And they said, they shook their head. And that was it. I couldn't talk anymore. I couldn't say a word. My cousin went down like this. His eyes were glassy. He was staring down at the floor. And I said, "What's going on here?" I was able to kind of move my head and my eyes around, but I couldn't talk. I wanted so bad to ask him. I said, "Is that Hiroko?" So they dumbed us down. They used some kind of energy that just, it's about the size of a, let's say it's about this size. Okay. I actually saw one in the hand of one guy at a convention one time, talking to Jim Mars. Those who know Jim Mars, he's passed away now. But I've got a picture of these two suspicious looking ET looking humanoids were standing near him. And one of them had a little black instrument in his hand, like a little flashlight about the size of a magic marker. So that's what they dumbed us down with. We didn't see it coming. And we were just, I couldn't talk. The taller one, the older one looked like he's 16, the other one looked like he's 15. They were dressed like teenagers. I guess they learned how to do that. One of them walked past me in my door. The tall one, the older one, he walked past me. I didn't even know it. I was out of it. But I could see, but I don't know why I couldn't see him walking into my house, because when he come out, he had my brown pleather case. I call it leather. It's not leather, but it was kind of a vinyl case in which I kept it from rain and water. It was my notes, actually. He was digging in my notes and he's looking at me, and I was wondering, I couldn't put it together. I was so much in the daze that I couldn't put this all together until afterwards. And he pulled up some notes and he looked at me like he had a real mean look on his face. I said, "Oh, I remember that look from his mother." I was thinking his mother is Hiroko. And the mean look he was giving me is I had notes on her in that pleather case. I think he took those notes out that pertain to his mother, and he took them and he walked back in the office and put the case back where I usually left it. And then they turned around, they looked at us, and I remember they just turned around and started walking away. I kind of come to when they hit my road in front of my yard, and I kind of come to, and my cousin was still out of it. I looked at him. I didn't want to shake him or anything, but and then when they got close to where Hiroko was at, he woke up and he said, "What the hell just what happened?" I said, "You were dumbed down." And he said, "Those are ETs?" I said, "Yes, they are." He said, "Oh my God." And he was turning pale white. And they grouped up together, and then they walked towards the road together. Now we could see down the highway and we can see up the highway. We did not see a car. They did not use a car. They did not come in a car. They were just standing there right by the stop sign. And I told my cousin, "Let's watch them." And just before our very eyes, they were gone in a flash, just gone. And my cousin looked up and down the highway, and I said, "You're not going to find them. They were teleported." He said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, teleported. They're gone." I said, "They just disappeared. They didn't have a vehicle." He said, "These ETs are going to kill you one of these days, Dave." He said, "I mean it." He said, he was cursing. He was really mad that I said, "Look, I didn't get you into this." I said, "I didn't know they were coming. I didn't know what was going to happen." He was so scared that he was mumbling. He got in his truck and he said, "They're going to get you one day." He said, "They really are, Dave." And he drives off. My wife asked me the next day, "So what did you do to him?" I said, "Nothing. He just saw some ETs. They were human." And that scared him to death. And so he'll never forget it, because my brother kind of teases him about it every once in a while. He said, "You've been ET'd, haven't you?" And he says about as shallow as a dry creek bed. and cause when it comes to this stuff, ETs and Bigfoot
Yeah,
and everything else. But he did see Bigfoot a couple of years later, and he
really.
scared, yeah, and he didn't believe in him, and he never watched TV. He never saw, Bigfoot, but he saw one, and he was scared to death. The same, it's about as much
Oh
as
yeah, that would be a very
he,
scary experience, especially
yeah,
in close quarters.
yeah, but and then it all dawned on me. I had some lucid dreams after that visit that they had, and I was writing her emails and sending her pictures. I did the pictures slowly, like one at a time, to see if she would break and tell me who she really was. She didn't. And there looked like three different people writing these emails back to me because she couldn't print or read English. So somebody else was writing those emails to me as I sent the pictures. I told her about the next to the last email. I guess we corresponded about 7 times when I sent the 9 pictures to her. And I told her, I said, look, you're not kidding me, Hiroko. You're an ET. Plain, simple. I said, you're an ET, and I know that. She never wrote back after that. So once you're on to them, that does it. So
That was the final. That was
yeah,
the end.
yeah. So I never saw her again, but I don't know if I did or not. Here's the thing. You don't know if they're shapeshifters. They change their appearance, whatever. But I did have a lucid dream about being in Sedona at that time. And this is why I knew she had to have a baby. And this is what happened. I was in the bed. There was 2 beds. I guess they were regular sized beds. And I slept in the one closest to the bathroom near on the one side. And I had a dream that there was a hose sticking into my groin area. My right knee was in the air. I don't know why. This has happened a couple of times where they put my right knee up. I don't know why they do that, but then they go with a hose. The hose looked like it was kind of a brown color, like a dark tan color hose. And I kicked it away with my leg. And then after that, they knocked me out because they knew I was resisting. So they knocked me out. But then I remember somebody helping me up out of the bed and then walking me. One had one arm and the other one had the other arm, walking me back and forth in the room. There was 2 silhouettes of 2 other humanoid, beings. I couldn't see who they were, just dark shadows. And I was walking towards those kind of like patio doors, sliding doors. And I walked towards them, but while they were doing that, they were shining this bright light in my eyes. It was an instrument about the size of that magic marker, and it looked like a fluorescent tube, except it was really bright. It hurt my eyes, and every time they went past my eyes, it hurt, and I kind of closed them, and they kept walking me. And I was wondering, why were they walking me, shining that light in my eyes? This took me several years to figure this out, Andy. And what they were doing is if you're laying down, you'll close your eyes, right? So they're not going to get a good light into your brain. So what they do is they walk you. You're walking. So your eyes will be open because they're walking you and they know
need
you'll
you functional to get a good look.
Right. So so they were kind of like amateurs with that because I was able to recall most of that dream. I went back a year later and I asked the manager, I said, I want room 14 again. Could you get me that room? He said, sure, it's open. He said, it's all yours. So I went in, I took a study and I walked up and down the room. I took pictures because when I left that room a year before, this didn't happen. I didn't know this happened until I had a lucid dream later. And I took pictures of the room, and I put them on my computer. And I looked at it and I said, oh my God. That's what I was doing. I was walking back and forth up to the patio doors and then back. And I said, that's what they were doing. And the table and the chairs were right there where I saw them. I said, there was 2 beings sitting there. I said, oh my God. I said, that's what it was. So I go back, I try to figure these things out. Just like I tried to figure out the second UFO I saw with my friend. I went back one day up in that lot, and that's before it's all grown over and everything's gone now. But I went up and took a look at where we saw it in the Southwest. I'm relating this to my one that I saw when I was 14 with my best friend. And we was looking at it in the Southwest, but when it took off due west. So I kind of drew a picture of it and I said, okay, it moved. That's something else I recalled. It moved about 35 degrees. So it didn't stay in place like we thought. We thought it just hovered there in one place. It didn't. It moved. And shot straight out west, because it couldn't have shot straight out west. It was above. It was on the other side of my house, and it shot out straight out west. And so I do check myself, and I research some of these things, and that's what I've been doing. I keep notes and I research things. My wife's got a good eye for things. She's an academic, and she's not into UFOs or anything, but she knows they exist. She knows that I have company in this house, and she calls them my buddies. She says, I don't like them here. And I said, I can't stop them. They come here, and that's what they do. And she's felt things.
This poor woman, most wives have to put up with a few old school friends that of their husbands that they don't really like or they're not fond of. And this wife, she has to put up with extraterrestrials dropping in
she
overnight, and fooling with her husband. I mean, this is a different set of marital conditions to deal with altogether.
Right. And she didn't know this when I married her. I didn't tell her about it. I said I had, UFO experiences, but she didn't know I was this deep, and it's still going today.
Yeah.
And especially with the event I told you, with the crickets in my ears, that event the other night, it scared me. It almost to the point where, should I stop? But the next thing that happened was some big abduction events right after that. And I think Hiroko was probably involved in that.
Oh, wow. You were abducted?
Yes, I've been abducted several times. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I've had these lucid dreams that actually told me, but these were the conscious. Now, the conscious abductions are what I'm just about ready to tell you. Now, this happened in 2011, right after that incident with Hiroko, with her two kids, my grandkids, I call them. They had the DNA from me. They bring your kids to show them one time. And then after you meet them one time, that's it. You don't see them no more.
Wow.
So these were my grandkids, and Hiroko was my daughter. Okay. That's where it all ends up. And I've had people tell me out of the blue.
So there's DNA from when you were a teenager. And
yes. Well, no, not when I was a teenager. Actually, when I was in 95,
wow.
when that little gray took samples. That's what he did.
Yeah.
That's where the samples come from for these two grandkids, I call them. And for now Hiroko might have come earlier. This could have happened. They could probably hold DNA. Their time is different than ours. Here, Earth time is a little different. You can be in outer space. You can be there for say 10 years, and you come back here 100 years to pass. The time differential.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, part of the time we have is based upon that turning of the Earth, right? I mean, so
right. Well, whatever dimension they come from, there's a time difference, and they live for thousands of years. So I don't know what dimension Hiroko come from or anything, but that semen could have been collected from me back when I was 14 on up. That's where she could have come from. They could have saved it, or years went by. But these two, I had a lady tell me. I was at a convention in Arkansas, a UFO convention. I went there with my buddies several years in a row. And in 2011, I went there. It was April. Around the first week of April, I went there. I went down and downstairs in this big convention center, there was people put up shops, and they were selling things, articles and clothing and UFO things. And I walked past this one gal who she worked with dolphins. And she was giving readings to people, and she was really nice gal, probably early 30s. And I started walking past her, and I looked at her displays, and she looked at me funny, and I thought, okay. And I started walking away, and she says, "Come back, come here." I said, "What?" She goes, I said, "I don't want a reading." Okay, I said I can read myself anymore lately. I said. She goes, "That's what I want to talk to you about." She said, "You were just abducted, weren't you?" And I said, "Yes, I was." I said, "Several times." And I said, "I just met an alien, humanoid alien." She goes, "Stop. Don't tell me what she looks like. I'll tell you what she looks like." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "I got a picture in the room. I can probably go get it." She goes, "No, I don't need it. I'll tell you what she looks like." Said she's Japanese Asian, about 5'5", and she has hair down to her shoulders, said she has cheekbones that are not familiar with most Japanese culture or race. And I said, yeah. And I said, who is she? She said, you know who she is. I said, no, you tell me. She said, that's your daughter. I said, what? Out of the blue. Now, this woman didn't know me. She just come out and told me this. And she said, that's your daughter. And I said, what about the two young ones? She said, those are grandsons. And I said, wow, she was right on. And I was standing there. I didn't tell her anything. She told me. And because I was going to get her a picture, I was going to show her what she looked like. And she said, I already know what she looks like.
Wow.
This woman was gifted also, some way or another. And, but that's where I come to believe that, if people felt this, then I was ignoring it for the longest time, that these two were my grandkids and she was my daughter. I thought it, but I didn't come out absolutely.
I mean, that's very strange. I guess you could say you could read coincidence to many of the other events, but not that one.
Yeah. And then she told me, Andy, she told me to go talk to this tall black guy. He was well dressed in a suit, tall, good looking guy. She goes, I want you. She said, I know you can read people. She said, I want you to go and talk to him. Tell me what you think. And I went and talked to him, and his buddy took off. And he was standing there, and I said, he was working with some kind of aeronautics company. At least that's what he said. But he was actually a psychologist, he told me. And I said, oh, you're a psychologist. And I said, you have ET knowledge? And he goes, what do you mean ET knowledge? And he looks at me and he says, you have a glow about you, don't you? I said, can you see it? He said, yes, I see it. Only a hybrid or an ET can see that glow. They go by color codes. If you're a red glow, they stay away from you. They like green glows, and they don't like black. They see a black glow around you, that's bad. Red glow is bad. A yellow glow is okay, and so is a blue glow. But a green glow is what they look for. And I said, oh, you can see my color aura. He goes, yes. I said, are you one of them? I said, are you a hybrid? I'm going to come right out and ask you, are you a hybrid? I said, you kind of look like a hybrid alien. He says, well, some people say I am. And he said, no. I said, I don't know about that. I said, you and I are talking to each other. And I said, it takes one to know one. I said, I think I know a little bit about what's going on here. And he looks at me kind of funny, like he didn't want to say anything more. He gave me his business card, but when a few days later, I tried to call that number, and the number wasn't even working. And I walked past this lady again. She said, what did you think? I said, you're correct. I think he is a hybrid. He's an ET walking in human skin. And so, yeah, so these are weird people that I run into. But to get to my abduction, conscious abduction, I'll tell that, and then I'll probably close it out because we're getting into long times here. But,
yeah.
It was a sunny afternoon, Andy, and I was on my computer. It was about 1:00 in the afternoon, 1:30. And here's what they do to abduct you. And I've heard this a lot of times from a lot of people, and it happened to me. They make you really tired. They hit you with some kind of energy. They make you tired. And so I was sitting there on my computer. I said, wow, I feel really tired. I slept okay. And I was doing some work on the computer, and I got up and I went and laid down to stretch my back out. I told you I had a bad back. So I just stretched my back out. I don't take naps. If I take a nap, I'm ruined. I cannot take naps.
That's it. Yeah. No sleep.
I'm just, you either sleep or you don't sleep. But I laid there, and then I heard this static electricity behind me. I was laying on my left side, and I had my hand, with my head, holding my head up, and I heard this static electricity. I said, what the heck is that? I turned around to check it out, and it was really loud. I mean, it was popping and snapping. I thought the house was burning. I looked around, and all of a sudden it hit me in the shoulder, and I was paralyzed. And I know what sleep paralysis is. I've had it a couple of times in my life. This was not sleep paralysis. This was something that hit me with electrical charge, and I was paralyzed. So I went straight, and I had my hand up against the headboard, and I thought, okay. I thought I'd move again. I tried it again, and it hit me again. That time I couldn't move at all. all I can do is move my eyes, and I was looking out my bedroom door. I could see the sun coming in from the other side of the rooms. And then I heard my sister's voice say, Dave, come on, you can do it. You can do it. And I called her Sissy. I said, Sissy, I said, do what? She said, you can do it. I said, Sissy, come to the door. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And she said, I can't come to the door. So I could talk and I could see, but I could not move. And to tell you a little backstory on that, my sister's been dead for 4 years.
Okay.
She come through the portal with these ETs through another dimension. That's the only way I can think of it. And I thought, okay, what's going on here? And then I felt a baby's hand in my fingers, and it was, I could feel the palm, and I felt the fingers, and I said, oh my God, it's a baby. It's about maybe a 5-6 month old baby, maybe somewhere in that area. But then I thought, no, wait a minute. After I looked at my records, my ledger, it was 9 months to the day that actually Hiroko and her 2 sons come and visited us, or me and my cousin. And I thought, oh my God, it's 9 months, but they don't need that much time. They can probably, create a human life quicker in these tubes that they have. And I felt, and I pulled down on the hand, and I thought, something is crazy. This is telling me there's a baby, and it's probably mine. Next to my hip, I felt a heavy weight set down, and the bed went down and was leaning up against my hip. I said, oh my God. I said, what's next? And I screamed out, God help me, real loud, twice. After the second time, everything just disappeared, and I was able to move. And I got up out of the bed and I walked around. I couldn't, after all these things that I've been through, and this was a conscious, being aware of what was happening. So the first time it happened about a week or 2 weeks before, I felt a shock on my finger, and I wasn't near any electrical thing. I was in bed sleeping about 10:30. I wasn't well. I think I had the flu. I was going to go, to the clinic the next day to get some medicine for the flu. And my finger was kind of like laying out, and all of a sudden a big shock happened. I heard this pop, and it hit my finger, and I thought my finger was blown off. So I said, oh my God. And I felt my finger, and it was still there. And I turned on the light and I looked at my finger. There's nothing wrong. It was an electrical snap that hit me really hard. I looked at where my nightstand and my light was at. I was about 4 feet away from it. I said I couldn't have never touched that area because, I was 4 feet away from it. But I had another event where my shoulder was hit again, and I pushed away with my arm, and I tried to push it away from me. This happened about a week. I think there was about a 2 or 3 week period that these electrical shocks hit me. And I thought I pushed it away, and it stopped. I talked to Dr. David Jacobs. He was at the convention that year. And he told me, and he laughed at me. I told him about the story. I said, you don't believe me, doctor? He goes, no. He said, you weren't being abducted. He said, they were bringing you back. He said, that's what happens when they bring you back. And he said, you were abducted, yes, but they brought you back.
That's the wake up.
Yeah. So it's in a reverse. Everything that happens with ETs, your mind will go into the reverse of what actually takes place. I thought I was being abducted, but I wasn't. I was being brought back.
Yeah, you walk at the end of the operation, not the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. And that's how ETs work. You never know which you're coming or going. But yeah, I've had some strange things that happened to me. My body's been frozen. This has happened in 2016. I was in Alaska for a couple of years. My wife was working with a DOD up there, and we were there for a couple of years, and a couple of things happened up there with upward strange things that happened. I got some pictures, I think, of a little gray on my camera up there in the house that we lived in for a couple of years, but nothing really strange like they talk about Alaska. I never saw a UFO in Alaska. That's weird.
I just think a lot of those programs, Alaska's the land of limitless possibilities.
Right, it is.
UFOs, lake monsters, and it makes good TV.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy there, though, because my tri-field meter in the living room, it pegged out. I told my wife, I said, this is not healthy for us to sit in. So we did not sit there and watch TV. We watched it in our bedroom, in which had less energy. I talked to actually our landlord lived downstairs, and he was a college professor, and he was I guess he was a big shot there at the Fairbanks, Alaskan college. And he had Arctic trips he did with the military, and they work with the military a lot there. That college does for some weird reason, whatever. But I told him, I showed him, I said, Asadi, they were Eastern Indian, real nice couple. They really liked me. And I went out to lunch with them several times and to a meeting, a Rotary meeting. That's where I got one of my apports in my pocket. But I showed him the meter. Now here's the scientist who knows all instruments. He looks at my meter. I said, Sadi, you know this tri-field meter. It's a nice meter, and it was pegging out. I said, do you see that? He said, what does that mean? I said, oh, come on, don't play dumb. He didn't want to tell me. I said, this is a tri-field meter. I said, you know what this is. I looked at him, I smiled. I said, you're not telling me, are you? I said, look at the energy that's in this room. I said, it's pegging out. I said, that's not healthy. I said, anything over 1.5 milligauss is not healthy. And I said, it's pegging out at 5 milligauss. I said, you can't live in this environment. I said, it makes me nervous to be in here. So he denied knowing anything. He said, I don't keep up with those kind of instruments. I said, come on, you're a scientist. My God, I said, you've probably seen elaborate instruments other than this. But yeah, there was high energy there, and I felt that. But getting back to the frozen thing, and I guess I'll start closing out here, but this is what puzzled my doctors. I got an implant right here in which I'm going to see the doctor in a couple of weeks. And he looked at it, but he didn't touch it. And he took an x-ray of it, and you can see it in there. It's right in my thumb area. And it actually hurts me when I handle a doorknob. And I told him that it needs to come out, but whatever you take out, I want it. It can't be a bone chip. Because if there was a bone chip, I couldn't move my thumb like that. Yeah. So it's got to be something added. And so the doctor he doesn't want to mess with it. He's actually ignored it 3 or 4 months ago when I first talked about it, and he took hand x-rays. So I'm going to be talking to him again in 2 weeks. I'm going to insist that, this causes me pain. I want it out, but I want it. Whatever you take out, I want.
That'd be interesting to see, man.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk to the doctor, but actually what happened when I was frozen, I talked to my other doctor, and this is a lady doctor. She was about the smartest doctor I ever had. She was a great doctor, and we kind of lost her because she went into management and went up into the hospital more. So I told her about my freezing episodes, and this was about just before she was leaving the practice and moving up. And she trains doctors, and she's smart enough to do that. It's a lovely lady. And she asked me, she said, tell me about your freezing episodes, because she saw it on my list I wanted to talk to her about. I said, yeah, this happened a couple of weeks ago. I said this was in 2020, I think, or 2021, maybe 2021 it happened. And I told her it just happened a couple of weeks ago. She said, well, how do you feel? I said, I wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning. My hands are folded across my stomach. I said, it's like me laying in a coffin. I said, I don't sleep like that. I said, I never sleep like that. I said, I felt my arms and they were ice cold. I said, I was shivering and shaking the bed violently. I'm a big guy, and I shook that bed violently. My wife didn't wake up. And the funny thing about that, my wife wakes up if my cell phone drops off of the nightstand. It's on the carpet, makes just a little thud. She wakes up. She said, what was that? And so she didn't wake up. The bed was shaking violently, and she didn't wake up. So that tells me something. I told the doctor that. And my wife was standing there, and she didn't say nothing because, she knew that something happened, but she didn't wake up. She knew she was knocked out. And the doctor said, well, she checked my charts and everything. She said, you don't have sugar. I said, no sugar diabetes or anything. She goes, well, she said, I don't know what happened. She said, was it cold in the room? I said, no. I said, it was August. It was hot. And I said, it was about 72 degrees, and I had blankets and a sheet on. I said, I wasn't cold. And I said, but I was freezing. My whole body was, I said, dead cold, dead. I should have been dead at that temperature. My body should have been dead. I told her that, and she goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. She had a doctor apprentice that was training, and she said, have you ever heard of that? She goes, no, I haven't. And I said, well, to add a little mystery to this, doctor, I said, this is the 6th year in a row that this happened, and it happens between August 11th and August 14th, every year for 6 years in a row. She looks at me, she said, you're kidding me, right? I said, no, I'm not, doctor. I said, I got notes. I got ledger notes that I keep notes on. I said, it's in my ledger 6 years in a row. The same thing happens to me. And her eyes got big. She looked at me. She looked at the other doctor. She said, I don't know what to tell you, David. And it just so happens that about 6 months later, I give her a copy of my first book, the UFO, and those stories are in there. So,
And now she knows to think about it. Now she's
yeah. So she knows I wasn't kidding. But no, I've had medical things happen to me that I don't understand. Just here about 3 months ago, I had marks on my legs, little holes in my legs. And I was thinking, and one guy who I thought he's kind of CIA type of guy, one of those. And he told me, said, that's not ET. I said, who is doing it? And he thought it was people like us, or certain groups of people, in which I don't want to say. Yeah. So, and he said they're little round holes, and they're in a row on my left leg. And not only did it happen then, it happened 2012, 2014, 2018, and then this past year in 23. And I've got pictures of all those little holes. I went to the doctor and I showed him the scars were healing by the time I got to the doctor. That's how long you got to wait. And I showed him the pictures that I took when they were fresh. They were like blood red, and they were just little holes, not scabs. No, there wasn't anything to do with, with any kind of a certain outbreak or any kind of disease or anything. And he looked at the pictures, and he looked at, and my leg, and they were healing up, and they were just about gone. He looks at me kind of strange. He didn't know what to say. I said, doctor, these are the 4 pictures in the separate years. I said, same little holes, but sometimes more so than others. He didn't know what to say. On the diagnosis sheet, he wrote down, patient has a rash. That's all he said. He couldn't say anything else. He didn't say it was some kind of a disease or anything. It was a rash, he called it.
Rash is the coverall explanation for the unexplained. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
On the skin.
Yeah. So I'm still, still things are happening. Like I told you about the dove story. I told you that just happened.
And the crickets.
Yeah. So that was a synchronicity, a spiritual. It was probably a warning to me in a way, what was to come, and what came, I told you about that happened to me the other night. I don't want to elaborate on that, but let's say to the audience, I heard very loud crickets.
Well, it's fascinating to me. As I say, this subject is almost completely unknown to me, really, Dave. And stepping into this world a little bit, listening to you tonight, has been eye-opening, really, really eye-opening. And most of the things you've mentioned, I've never even heard of before. These concepts, and these characters in this, this ET play that's going on in our world. So I'm really grateful for that. Just before we go, just let everybody know, where they can get the books, how they can get in touch, and support anything that you're doing.
Okay, I don't have a website. I got it on Hangar One Publishing. I got a website there. My books are being sold on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Kindle. And who are they? And what are they here for? That book is still selling. UFO books aren't big sellers, but this book continues to sell quarterly. People are interested. I think there's more interest now since disclosure. And then my Angel book is on Barnes and Noble, Kindle by the same publisher. The only publisher is different was the Senseless Wars book and Conflicts, in which I describe secret groups and why we fight and who earns money from it and who doesn't. It's the poor man who goes to war, and it's the rich man who benefits. That's what it's all about, the elites. So this book kind of targets that, but I'm republishing that book. I took it from a publisher because there were some erroneous things going on. Numbers were not being straight. So I took it away from them, signed out, and I turned it over to Amazon to publish it. So I'm republishing that book, Senseless Wars. But my other book I'm working on now is about an ET and a humanoid relationship in which they're battling the evil underground, in which I told you the reptilians. What I put in there is the reptilians, the tall grays, the human extraterrestrial, in which are mean. They don't like us, and they're just like us. They're human, and they're like us. And people might have seen pictures of them in the past that they were in Pentagon and places like this. Yeah. So, but they are the meanest ones. And then the mantis beings. Those I have as the four underground and the elites, cabal, all mixed in together with that New World Order. And this is a battle that he becomes a hero, and he's battling all these things underground, just like what's going on really right now.
I like that. So sort of a fictional story based upon sort of real situations.
It's based on all three of my books.
Wow.
Except I'm speaking in third person. I'm actually my hero. I'm talking through my hero because I've witnessed war. He's battling the underground. I witnessed ETs, and I've witnessed angelic and entities that we're not familiar with, like the cryptids. It's in that angel book. I got cryptids, Bigfoot. I got the 8 monsters from the Bible history. So I've got all that in that book, and the angel and that and the supernatural entities. That book was released about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it took a lot of research. So that's a book, but this fourth book is a sci-fi book. So I wanted to do a sci-fi, and I put this all in the book together.
Well, I think it's popular. Everybody loves sci-fi. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on and explaining this. I'm definitely got to pick up, I think, a copy of Today first. That'll be my first one. So suggest anybody else out there who's listening, get on to Hanger One Publishing or Amazon or Barnes or wherever you shop, pick up a copy of one of Dave's books. They really are amazing. Dave, thanks so much.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much.